Hey there, it's Conway here, and in this video I want to talk about something in the world of sales that's becoming quite controversial, which is this role of sales player, sales manager. And I want to talk about kind of why I think it's such a bad idea. I want to explain why I think that kind of model or that role is fraught with danger, why it's broken, and really why you should be getting out of that situation if you are in a player manager role. Now, just for clarity, for anybody who's maybe not sure even what I'm talking about, it's this role in sales where you're a sales manager, but you still retain maybe some accounts or some sales opportunities. So you're a sales rep as well as a sales manager, hence a player manager. And there's lots of reasons why this is such a bad thing and why it has actually a negative impact on a sales organization. That's fundamentally what I want to talk about. Now, I guess there's a bit of a caveat here, because if you run your own business, if you have been responsible for the sales activity and growing the company, but perhaps now you're trying to scale it and you're bringing in a salesperson, then yes, you are going to have to still do some playing. You're still going to have to do some selling. You can't just overnight give that responsibility to an individual. They've got to ramp up, etc. So there's always going to be that little bit of player manager in that situation, and that's fine. But as you build a team away from that one or two people, you do need to start extracting yourself from playing and selling at the same time. And that's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about as a true sales manager running a sales team, however big that might be, 2, 12 people, whatever it might be. Now, with that said, let me just kind of talk perhaps about some of the benefits first of all and why people do this, because I understand that it is something that's kind of quite attractive, I guess, as a responsibility and a kind of a role, because it often comes about where maybe the business owner wants to just basically get 2 people for the price of 1. If you're a sales leader, perhaps you hire somebody who's going to sell and manage, then you've kind of got 2 roles for the price of 1. So there's some cost benefit in doing that. There are other benefits, I guess, if you're doing some selling and you're running a team, because you could lead by example. You could say that's one of the reasons why it's worth doing. You're giving some direction to the team on kind of what's achievable, or you're just want to kind of keep your own sales skills kind of sharp, and perhaps, or you want to just kind of stay close to the market, stay market relevant, so you understand kind of what's going on by still going out there and meeting customers. But a lot of those things you can do as a sales manager anyway. So although there are a lot of the excuses I hear people using as to why they want to play as well as manage, it's not really true that that's only achievable by having a sales quota yourself, or an individual sales quota as opposed to a team quota. So they're kind of a bit false beliefs, as I sometimes call them. And I also think if somebody says to me I'm trying to do it because I want to kind of keep my selling skills sharp, well, why? Or, what's the motivation behind that, I often ask, because are you thinking, well, if this job doesn't work out, I can always go back to sales? Well, then your motivation isn't in the success of being a sales manager and a team leader. It's actually, you're kind of hedging your bets. And anytime you do that, you're always putting one or both of those sort of situations at risk. So, all right, you could argue there's a few minor benefits of the role, but the downside is so great that it's really not worth even considering. It's fraught with danger, as I said. So let's talk about what are some of the downsides. Well, let's just think of it from a tactical perspective first of all. If you think of it from a time perspective, well, as a sales manager, that's a full-time job. A salesperson is a full-time job. But as a sales manager, you've got a lot to do, lots of roles, lots of responsibilities. You've got to manage the team, first of all, the people, and look after them. You've got to manage information sharing and communication throughout the business and up and down through the organization. You've got to, again, keep some customer interaction, and so there is going to be some time when you're working opportunities with your individual contributors, and you will be out in the field meeting customers. So there's time needed for that. There's then your general admin or your reporting, and that's significantly increasing day by day, it would seem. So there's all your reporting and admin, all that sort of stuff, and your CRM cleanliness, all that kind of thing that you've got to take care of. And then what about you and your own personal development as well? So if you think about all those responsibilities, that is a full-time job. And that's why I often say to people that sales manager isn't just a title, it is a job, it's a set of roles and responsibilities, and it's a full-time job. Now, if you were, as many sales managers are, a successful individual contributor, and you've moved into sales management, maybe as a promotion or career progression or however you might, or just a change as you might look at, whatever way you look at it, you know that coming from being an outstanding salesperson, that too is a full-time job. To be highly successful in that role, you put in 110%, as they sometimes say, although technically you can only have 100, but you put in 100% into that role. So now we're saying, oh, you want to be player manager, what's going to give? You can't be 100% manager and 100% player, individual contributor. It just doesn't work. Now you can argue, as people often do with me, that, well, as a manager, I'll have less accounts. But even so, you're still going to put effort into managing those accounts, and that effort and time has got to be taken from doing the sales manager job well and effective. Now, another objection I get when I have this conversation with people is say, well, yeah, well, I can multitask. I'm really good at multitasking. That is a fallacy. I know you may think you're kind of good at it, and you can manage it to a certain extent, but neuroscience has proven time and time and time again that actually multitasking is very ineffective. The ramp time, or whatever they call it, between changing roles, etc., it's just all too detrimental to actually doing something really effectively. And if you're not effective, then your performance in either of those roles is going to be impacted negatively. Now, there's also a potential impact on your skills. There's a discrepancy there, because even though there are many skills that you can transfer from being an effective salesperson into sales management. So, for example, if you think about sales is fundamentally trying to identify where a customer is now and where they want to go, isn't it? Their current state and their future state, and selling them something that allows them to create that transition or that transformation. That's where the value is. Well, coaching as a sales manager is quite similar. It's where is your individual contributor today? What are the challenges they're facing? Are they missing quota, or they just want to excel in their role? What is the outcome that they're trying to achieve? And it's helping them on that journey. So there are many skills that are the same, but then there are a whole host of new skills that you need to develop as a manager. Your coaching skills need to be really finely tuned, etc. Things like that. And you've got to put time and effort into that as well. So where is that time going to come if you've got this split attention almost between two different roles? So hopefully you can see just as a real practical concept, it's fraught with a lot of problems. Now here is where the bigger problem is. This is what I really want you to take away from this video and this training, is the understanding the impact it actually has, almost at a kind of more subconscious level in many cases, although a lot of it does manifest itself in a conscious way. But the impact it has on the individuals that you're managing, your team. You're there supposed to be their leader, and if you're now a player as well, they will see that you have kind of split priorities. That's probably a better word. Split priorities between looking after them and their best interest and your own best interest, because they'll know that you will want to hit quota, and therefore that is going to be probably your greatest priority. So it really can have a really negative impact on trust, and trust is such an important part of being an effective manager and effective sales leader. And it can create this real kind of toxic environment, because what they'll start to do is think about you as a player potentially picking the best opportunities or hoarding the best leads and things like that. And that may not be the case, but that is what their perception might be. And particularly if they're not achieving, because one of the reasons why a lot of people move into this player manager role actually is because sales team is perhaps underperforming, and this is becoming a greater problem than it ever was. And therefore they think, well, if I step in and own a few accounts and take some responsibility, I can maybe shore up some of that shortfall and save my own bacon by hitting my team quota, and therefore getting paid and keeping my job and everything that might come with the success of achieving team goals. So you're trying to shore up. Now, if you're doing that, as I said, people are just going to say, well, you're just picking the best opportunities. Or they'll find excuses for their failure by saying, yeah, but you had the best leads. Or if I had that opportunity, or if I had that deal, I'd have been able to close it. So you end up creating excuses for them to justify their failures. And they'll put all that blame on you. And that also creates quite an anti-competitive environment in some respects, because you're now competing for commission that should have been theirs. You're competing for maybe awards. You may still get recognized as a top performer should you hit target. But if you imagine that, you can't be seen to fail either. So the amount of stress and pressure it puts on you to actually close your deals, because if you're thinking of leading by example, which is one of the things I said earlier, is why sometimes people do take on this manager-player role, then you've got to perform, haven't you? You've got to close those deals. So very quickly we see this transitional, this drift. Even if you sort of say, well, I'll do the jobs 50-50 or 80-20, to 80% of my time as a manager and 20% as a player, managing my own opportunities, very quickly, I promise you, your role will transition into the 80-20 the other way around. Only 20% will put into looking after your team, and 80% will be hitting target, because you don't want to be seen to be fail, you don't want to give them excuses that it can't be done, and so on and so forth. So it's a real problem, and I want you that's why I want to shoot this video. It's a real problem. I want you to really understand the negative impact this player manager role can actually have if you think about it from the big picture. There's some small short-term benefits potentially, but they're just minor. They just totally get outweighed by the negative elements of the player manager role. So I'm going to leave it with hopefully a lot of food for thought. If you are in a player manager role, I want you to really think about how can you work your way out of that. How can you maybe take some of those opportunities, give them to a player, on your team, now one of your individual contributors, one of your direct reports, and help them close that piece of business. So the piece of business gets closed anyway, but you build your success on the success of other people. And that's the mindset you really need to have. It's not about you anymore. And this is sort of just to wrap up here, last couple of kind of thoughts about the psychology around this. People like certainty, right? We like security, we like the safety, we like to kind of know what we're doing. And that's why if you've moved up from being a successful salesperson, we feel comfortable and certain selling, and therefore that's why we like it. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with now being a manager if you've never done it before. So you can see again from a sort of quite a primitive kind of priority, we want to do something that we know we can control. And another basic human need is significance. And if you've had a lot of recognition and stuff in that role, then again, it just sort of drags you towards it. What you've got to do is start to recognize that your significance and your success needs to come off the back of the success of your team. That is the primary objective of a sales manager. Now, the beauty of this is actually when you help each of those team members really excel and become successful in their own right and earn good money as you can in sales, and you see that kind of transitioning into supporting their family or whatever their priorities might be, or buying the toys if that's what kind of floats their boat, then that's all good. And I promise you will get an even bigger buzz from being a great sales manager than you did from actually kind of closing deals. So think about that as well. It really is so much more rewarding. So that's it for this video. Please, I'd love to get your thoughts or comments. I'm sure there'll be arguments some of you have around whether this is real or not, or whether, to justify quite often your own position, perhaps if you are in that player or manager role. But if you want some help getting out of that, if you kind of sit back and go, wow, never really thought about all of that, I can see now why maybe some of the things are happening in the team that are happening. Maybe I've put some context around that. So if that is the case and you want some help, reach out to me. DM me, whatever. Just reach out, put a comment in the chat or wherever you're watching this video, and I'll come back to you and we can have a conversation at free charge, and I'm happy to just kind of help you maybe get some clarity on how you could take things forward and what you might need to change to help you, as I said, transition away from that role and more into a true sales leader. All right. So thank you for your time. Hope you found that useful. Please, as I said, do comment and share or ask any questions. I'd love to see some interaction here. Feel free to share and repost this. Always appreciated on the old socials, as they say. But for now, my name is Brian Conway. You take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.